So it's my real pleasure to introduce Baffour for today's lecture. And we've now, as a group, all known Baffour for how long? Year and a half?
Yeah, almost a year and a half now.
Almost a year
Yeah,
and a half.
it's been a
Baffour
while.
did his bachelor's degree at Fisk University in conjunction with Vanderbilt. For those of you who don't know, Fisk University is an HBCU. It's a really terrific place, and they partner with Vanderbilt for engineering. And I really think it's that combination of liberal arts, equity, and engineering all together that I feel really defines Baffour. So we're so excited when he decided to give up on those other areas and come to the kind of cold East Coast and bring the benefit of all of his work. And before, after graduating from Fisk and before coming here, Baffour worked at a school that was really trying to build up their STEM program for high school students and middle school students. And he really led all of their work in creating a makerspace and creating curricula and so on. And I think that actually Baffour's probably going to talk about things that don't relate to either of those experiences, but are all experiences in entrepreneurship and equity work that he's been doing between here and Ghana and with communities that are underserved. And so I wanted to just point out there were all these different things that that contribute to his journey. So I'm so glad that he gets to tell us about his journey as a group, and that we get to benefit from the lessons that he's learned. So yeah, very cool.
Thank you. So yeah, welcome to my talk, which is a reflection on how to learn, learning to help, and staying out of the way. The last part's really important. So yeah, just some housekeeping before. In different situations, like I want you to be like neutral observers, but others like I want you to like kind of like be like a personal participant, put yourself in it. You'll know by the situation. If you don't, raise your hand. I got you. Let me know if you can't hear me. It's a small room. It feels a lot bigger when you're sitting over there, but it's not. And let me know if I'm speaking too fast, because I tend to do that when I get nervous. So yeah. All right, first things first, the agendas, we're going through like a composition activity, just kind of like audience composition activity. The statements can be a little tense, so if you don't feel like participating, don't. But I encourage you to. We're going to talk about how the desire to do this kind of work came about, and about opportunity, self-efficacy, and kind of enjoyment of the field, pedagogy and refinement, so basically like the methodology, and trial by fire, so like when we actually like put it to work. All right, so first things first, like I said, if you don't want to participate, it's cool. So raise your hand if you believe your hard work is the reason you're here today. All right, if you want to. Raise your hand if you can point to a chance encounter without which you probably wouldn't be here. Raise your hand if you've ever been the only in a space. Raise your hand if you have explicitly been made to feel like you don't belong in a space, like someone told you straight up. Raise your hand if you felt like an outsider in a space, even though there wasn't anything explicitly telling you you're an outsider. All right, keep your hand up if you found out later that that feeling was correct. All right, now swap hands if you learned after some time that the feeling was incorrect and you were actually just in your head about it. All right, raise your hand if you've ever wondered about the composition of faculty to staff to custodians at any facilities, whether it's at your school, at, I don't know, a job in industry, something like that. All right, and then raise your hand if you've ever felt like you don't deserve to be where you are. Okay, cool. So those are kind of priming you for what's to come, but I just wanted to kind of get an idea of who I'm talking to, right? So I grew up in Ghana. I was born there in 1995. I'm an old head now. And I'm the boy all the way to the left. My dad was, he's retired now. He was in Ghana's Navy as a captain. He was also the director of electrical and mechanical engineering. So I was always around these kind of like tanks and vehicles and stuff like that. So that's kind of like what got me into all of this. All right, so how did we get here as far as like the outreach stuff, like what even like brought it up, right? Well, first thing is a brief history, and we're gonna play a little game called was it hard work, was it luck, was it networking? All right, so just so we are all in the same like definition, even if you don't agree with my definition, just run with it. All right, so hard work, intentionally going after opportunities with focus and grit. Luck, stumbling into opportunities by chance, by God's grace, by the universe, by whatever you want to call it. And networking, going after opportunities through previously established connections. So it's like, you know that person knows that person that you need to talk to. So you specifically go to them for that reason, not accidentally talk to them about it and it comes up. All right. So coming to the US, I came to the US in 2008. My uncle in Los Angeles, his kids went to this private school called Oaks Christian School, and his kids were doing well there. They're like superstar athletes and like superstar students. And so my dad was like, hey, can my son go there? And my uncle. My uncle was like, I don't know, I'll ask. So he asked the school. The school was like, yeah, if it's anything like your kids, like, sure, we'd love to have him, right? Yeah, they were expecting me to be like a 6'5" like African monster, but like that, I was 4'7" and 80 pounds in 8th grade, so that was not what came on the plane. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in the U.S. They sent the entrance test for the private school. I passed it well enough for them to be like, yeah, come through, and then they gave me like financial aid to come and all that. So that's how I ended up in the U.S. So if you think it was hard work, raise your hand. And you feel free to judge me right now. Like, I understand that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm not gonna take any offense to that. All right, and if you wanna raise your hand for multiple things too, you can as well. If you think it was luck, raise your hand. If you think it was networking, raise your hand. Okay, cool. All right, so next, Oaks Christian was the name of the school I went to. And Oaks is probably the only time in America I've not felt like an immigrant as far as like my status, because they just gave me like full financial aid the whole time. I never had to think about like applying for a scholarship as an immigrant or anything like that. So in my head, like I was chilling, like I was one of y'all, right? And I was cool. And then senior year hit, and it was time to apply for colleges and stuff. And you know what they tell you: study hard, get good grades, you get a scholarship, you go somewhere, right? So I studied hard. I got like a 3.8 unweighted, 4.2 weighted. Only reason I still remember this is because I was really mad about like the outcome of the situation. I got into schools. I didn't get enough financial aid, and that's because I was unaware that applying as an international person, a lot of scholarships and stuff like in the country that you're applying at usually is for that country's like citizens and permanent residents only. And I didn't know this, and so like I didn't find out till like you're applying, right? That's kind of late to be finding out that, right? So at graduation, I didn't know where I was going. I was probably going to go back home to Ghana, but then we started looking at community colleges in the area. Moore Park College was $10K for the year as an international student. And so my mom took out a loan at like 21% or 29%, something crazy. Because they're like, well, now you know, so go look for schools that have like more favorable financial aid towards international students and try to figure something out, right? So I did that and ended up in the same place. I had more financial aid, but not enough to go anywhere. And so we settled on the fact that I was just gonna go back home to Ghana and like just go to college there, which again, it's not a bad thing, right? The only thing about it was that I'd prefer to go to Ghana on my own terms, right? Not because it didn't work out here. So I was disappointed by that. And then I had a chance to encounter with a friend who just happened to be in town from college, and he was like, what's going on with your life? And I told him what's up, and he's like, oh, okay, I'll talk to my dad about it. I was like, okay, I didn't think anything of it. I thought you were just being nice. But then he talks to his dad about it. His dad happens to know the vice president at Fisk University. He sent him my transcripts and my SAT scores. And the guy's like, oh, we want to give this guy a full ride. Like tuition, dorm, textbooks, food, everything taken care of, like just like that, right? And that's how I ended up at Fisk. And I wanted to study engineering, as you saw from me on the tank and stuff. And Fisk doesn't have an engineering program, but they have a collaboration with Vanderbilt, which has an engineering program. As long as you're able to get into Vanderbilt, like you're able to like go on. And if you go to Vanderbilt through Fisk, there's like another pool of financial aid that is opened up to you, right? So that's how I ended up at Fisk, and that's how I ended up at Vanderbilt. So let's play the game. Hard work, if you think so, raise your hand. Luck, if you think so, raise your hand. Networking, if you think so, raise your hand. All right, cool. So next, 2015, my first internship. So I was a member of the Fisk University rocket team while I was there, and outside of our rocket work, our advisor, Dr. Wallace, shout out Dr. Wallace, really awesome dude. He really pushed us to do a lot of outreach, and so we'd go to a lot of of the schools, especially with underrepresented populations in STEAM, right? So we did a lot of outreach geared at girls. We did a lot of outreach geared at Black and brown people in Nashville and all that, and it was cool. And so on one Saturday, we're at the Nashville Science Adventure Center. We're like the premier people because we're the Fisk rocket team. You know, we're cool, right? And so we're front stage, and the Vanderbilt Dr. Kayvon Stassen, he's the head of the REU, the physics REU. He comes through with his kids and he starts talking to Dr. Wallace because they know each other. And he's like, hey, by the way, we have this REU summer internship program. You think anybody in your group is interested in it? That was my second year in college. I should have been looking for an internship. I wasn't. I was just happy that I was still here. So I was like, cool. But so Dr. Wallace told us, and I was like, yeah, sure, I don't have any summer plans. Like, I'll do it. And so that's how I ended up with my first internship. And the work I did there actually led to a publication. So that was listed as an author in. And so let's play the game. Hard work, raise your hand. Luck, raise your hand. Networking, raise your hand. All right. So then we get to Landmark, how I ended up there. So remember that whole me being international making it tough to get financial aid? So that applies to jobs too. So now I'm graduating college, and I've had several rounds of interviews and stuff, and several people are just like, yo, this is cool. It'd be a great thing, but like, we got to sponsor you. That's a lot. And you know, I can't be mad at that, right? It's a lot to go through. Like, if I talk about it, that's gonna be like half my talk. So like, I'm gonna just skip it. Just know it's a lot, right? And Jason, so when I first moved to California, I actually didn't go straight to my uncle's house. I went to one of his family friends' house. His name's Jason McMaster. I stayed with them for a year, and then I moved with my uncle the year after. So Jason happened to have been rising through the ranks while I was going through school and stuff, and he ended up getting a job in Atlanta as a head of school. And Jason's one of those heads of school who's like, school should be fun. Like, where are all the electives at? You know, like he really wanted to soup up the school film program, aviation program, engineering program, fashion, all this different stuff. So he happened to be in Nashville to come and see me because since I was one of the students who benefited from financial aid at Oaks Christian, he was going around the country interviewing several students like, where are they now? So, for the fundraising gala to show like, hey, all your money is going to like good places, more or less, right? And so while he was there, after they interviewed me, he's like, by the way, I'm going to be moving to Atlanta and I need an engineering guy and you do engineering, so you want to come? And like at that point, I still wanted to go industry. So I was like, But like after like a while, just like, all right, you know what, let's do it. Let's see what happens. Because he was like, I don't know if this is going to work well. Like I might have to fire you after a year, but like I might not. Like we'll see. So that's kind of like what happened. And that's how I ended up at Landmark. And yeah, so the Maker's Place and TechLit are the two organizations I work with. And I ended up with because of my work at Landmark, like, and getting into like the teaching engineering every day in class and stuff like that. So that whole section. If you think it's hard work, raise your hand. If you think it's luck, raise your hand. If you think it's networking, raise your hand. All right, cool. And then the last one. So Princeton, all right, and Nationsflow. So some of you know how I ended up at Princeton, but basically what happened was I'd been at Landmark for 4 years. After year 3, like I would share like student projects in like my family group chat with my friends and stuff because they were doing some dope stuff. So I was like, yo, check this out. And they were like, make an Instagram page or make a YouTube channel or make a whatever. I don't have social media except for Facebook because if you delete your Facebook, all your accounts go, and I'm not trying to do all that all over again. So I'm keeping that one. But I don't post anything, and so I kept like shunning them off. But eventually I was like, fine, I'll use my LinkedIn, I'll activate it and do something with it. And so I started putting student projects on there and stuff. That was like August 2021, maybe July, and then by like December, somebody hit me up from Princeton like, hey, we have this robotics lab and we're looking for managers. Like, we think you should apply. And I thought it was a scam. And so, Yeah, I thought it was a scam, so like I almost didn't respond, but I was just like, just in case, because I respond to scams, but like to mess with them, like, and so luckily that was not my impulse this time. I was like, are you sure you're in the right place? And then they're like, yeah, should we not have contacted you? I'm like, no, I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. I was just making sure, you know. And so clearly worked out because I'm here, right? And so that's how I ended up here at Princeton. So if you think that's hard work, raise your hand. If you think that's luck, raise your hand. If you think that's networking, raise your hand. All right, cool. So yeah, and Nation Soul was through Princeton. Random chance encounter, me being in a place I didn't need to be. Not like for a bad reason, but like it was really random that I got the invitation. All right. So yeah, that's Dr. Wallace. That's me up there, like second from the right. That's our rocket team. And like I was saying, Dr. Wallace is a really cool guy. He is the second, like how I ended up in this outreach space, right? So Dr. Wallace always used to talk about self-efficacy, right? So first question I want to ask you is, like, raise your hand in here if you believe you can do difficult things. Yeah, I mean, I figured most of you do because you're here, right? So, right, and so basically, this is gonna sound dumb, but I was unaware that people didn't think they could do stuff, right? Because like in my head, like you see me, I'm standing on a tank at like 3 years old or whatever. Like I'm just like I had a really like great chilling experience growing up in Ghana. My family was upper middle class. My parents both came from not upper middle class, but like they made it so that I was chilling. You know, life was good and stuff. I actually didn't start like experiencing like hardships like that till I got over here, which was the irony because I didn't even know America had homeless people. So that was like just a mind flip. Like yeah, it was strange, but yeah. Yeah, no, it was crazy, right? And so, like I said, we used to do a lot of outreach to schools in like for Rocket Team and stuff. We'd go to a lot of different schools, and Dr. Wallace always told us like we got to focus on making the science enjoyable. We got to focus on making the demos enjoyable. Like he said, the science will come later, right? You want to capture them. The hook is the important part in the beginning. Initially, that's the most important thing, and then afterwards, if you have captured their attention, they will keep their attention with you long enough to learn what's actually going on. Okay, and so that's like a really big lesson that I learned from him. All right, so the summary of how we ended up here is just basically the idea of like as we played that game of luck, hard work, networking is me coming to terms with the fact that when I worked really hard in school, like they told me I would, and everything was going to work out, it didn't, and then it didn't again, and I was kind of disillusioned with what hard work leads to and stuff because I was like, bro, this sucks. Like I put in all this time, like all these all-nighters, like it doesn't like really mean anything when it was just the fact that I randomly happened to see my friend whose dad happened to know the vice president of Fisk University. You see what I'm saying? Like it wasn't, I didn't create that opportunity, right? And I started to look back at my life and realize there are a lot of opportunities that I didn't create, right? There are a lot of things that found me, right? And so the how was like, how do we manufacture that luck for like more people, you know? How do we increase self-efficacy? Because I didn't realize there's some people who won't even take an opportunity that comes to them because like they don't even think that like they can do it, right? And then the how can we help students enjoy the sciences? Because you know when you're like grade school and stuff, science is actually like, yo, that's really hard class, or you're a nerd, you know, like there's not, which is really weird because science is a really enjoyable thing. Like even like I know y'all grad students are kind of going through it every now and then, but like I mean at the end of the day, like y'all still doing a PhD in like robotics and stuff, like because there's something there inside you that makes you want to do it, right? And so it's like how to like make sure that kids also have that in them instead of being like, oh man, we got science class. Oh man, we got chemistry. This sucks, right? So next we're going to talk about like the pedagogy and the refinement. So project-based learning done well and accessibly. All right. So prototyping happened at Landmark. They basically told me like, here's an empty room, build a program. Like, cause I wasn't dealing with engineers. I was dealing with like administrators who were like experts in their own fields, but like they didn't necessarily know what an engineering program for a school needed to look like, right? Jason had me visit the one at Oaks. I talked to the teacher who had done it for a year, and he was like, yeah, this is what I did, and this is some of the materials I used and stuff. And I got some of the equipment he recommended, but like a lot of the materials like I diverted because my philosophy with coming to it was me taking what I enjoyed in college and doing that, and what I didn't enjoy, I was like, nah, I'm good, right? And that was basically it. And with that idea, I just freestyled for I don't know how many days, but like I just kept freestyling after freestyle after freestyle. If it worked, I kept doing it. If it didn't work, I threw it away. And that was basically like my way of building the program at Landmark. And also, I surveyed my students like after almost like every lesson. I'd be like, hey, did you enjoy it? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Now that you kind of understand what I was trying to teach you, how would you have taught it to make yourself get it like better, more effectively and stuff? And so like by doing that, I got a better way of teaching the lessons because they taught me how to teach them, right? And
They didn't complain about being surveyed so much.
nah,
Being enjoyable.
nah, because I did it like there's these things I do like reflections, and basically I'd ask the question, and then I'd give everybody like 30 seconds to write down their answer, and I'd go through the whole class, and everybody would say their answer. And the reason I did that is so they could also figure out how everybody else is doing, and they could like learn from detailed experiences of each other and not just like their attempts. And that wasn't just for like the surveys, but also like when we do like I don't know, some challenge and like make the boat carry the most rocks before it drowns or something like that. They got to learn like why did this student decide to make their boat really flat versus this one decided to make their boat really tall. So yeah. And so one of the first questions I got were, are we just gonna build paper planes and bridges? And it was during like the open house, like this kid, like he had like this really stone face, like look, and he was just like, yeah, so is this all we're gonna do? And I don't know, I was like, nah, that wasn't the plan. And he's like, okay, cool. Because apparently they had an attempt before at a STEM course, and that's kind of like what they ended up doing the whole time. And so now I realized that, okay, there's already a negative bias towards like what I'm about to try and do. So like I really got to be on point, you know? And I also realized I couldn't be too theory heavy with the math and science concepts. I can't just like come in and like just slap a bunch of matrices on the board, like welcome to linear algebra, or like talk about a bunch of diffie-qs and stuff. Like we had to do a real trial and error type learning in the classroom, and which is fine because we learn a lot of things trial and error, right? And the reason why it was fine with doing that is because even with something like driving a car, you don't need to know how the engine works to drive a car. Like technically, you need to know how the pedals work, gears, steering wheel. You got to put gas in it, right? Change the oil, 3,000 to 5,000 miles, depending on what kind of oil you get. Make sure the tire pressure is good, right? You don't need to know your radiators, your pistons, all that. And by the time you want to know about your radiators and pistons, it's because you want to modify your car, which means you care about it enough to go do that work, right? And that's kind of like the same idea with the students, where I realized I didn't need to like sell them on the details early on. I just needed to get them like enjoying it enough, like because once they enjoyed it enough, they would go for the details. It happened time and time again. All right, and so like building an electric skateboard. So with that, you need an ESC, electronic speed controller, motors, preferably DC brushless, transmitter, receiver, LiPo battery, like, and then you need to like make your own gears, maybe 3D print them, maybe you just get some wood, saw it down, whatever you want to do, right? And you figure out how to put it all together, and you figure out how to like tune it so that it works exactly the way you want it to work, right? So you don't need to know motor theory to do that, right? You don't need to know about like the wind-ins and the coils and all that different stuff. You don't need to know about flip-flops and stuff and how the ESC works, right? You just need to know how to use it. And so that's what I realized over time. And so that's kind of like how I geared the learning towards, because eventually the students who did want to know why does the ESC do that, they asked the question, right? But at that point, they were ready to receive the answer, all right? So the next thing was making it accessible, and accessible in multiple ways. Financially, so like we can't just use like $1,000 VEX spots and like $300 Lego Mindstorms. We also had to use like a $80 MBOT or something like that, because if a student was interested enough in the subject in class and they wanted to like go get something at home, I wanted them to be able to like have that option, right? And the way I showed that it was valuable was by also using it in class with them, so that they don't feel like, oh, there's just some like cheap Amazon knockoff or something like that, right? Hardware and OS, different students had computers, some had Chromebooks, some had Mac, some had PC, some had Linux, right? And so you had to I had to make sure that it was compatible with everything that they were doing. And so that's how I leaned towards with a lot of the software I use in class. Experience level, some students got in there and they would race to the end. Like they were really good at certain subjects, but they would slower on other subjects. And then some students were slow on this subject, but faster on other subjects. So I had to like figure out teaching method that allowed me to turn up the heat for the really fast students and cool it down a little bit for the slower students, right? All in the same class. So that was part of making it accessible. And personalizable, like students needed to be able to see their interests in the subject matter, right? So like you'll see later, like one of my students, she did like this. If you're a fan of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, she like tried to make like water bending gloves or like something like that. Yeah, but like I gave them the opportunity to like do stuff like that when they wanted to do that. And yeah, and so when it was working out, then I started doing it at more like I got permission from the school to use a makerspace for other elementary schools because we're a private school. We had raised money for our space. Like other schools didn't have those same resources, so I was trying to bring the students in, not just for a tour, but like we sat down, I got out the robots, they got to see the 3D printer in action and all that, just so at least they can know if they hate engineering, right? Because looking at things on TV, you can't always tell, right? But like you can touch it and you can see what's going on and you can figure out if this is for you or if you pass and want to go study finance or something. And then the gala showcases. So the school did a lot of like fundraising, and so we would have like these showcases of like our students' work. And so that was an important part of the process. Them being able to see other people appreciate it, because like me, the guy used to be me being like, oh, that's dope, or like I don't know about all that. But like when somebody new said it, it's like it meant more to them. Like a lot of us aren't parents, but I've worked with a lot of parents, so I've heard this from them. I don't get it. When I say it, they don't do it, but when you say it, they do it. Like that's like the sentiment. So it's the same thing in the classroom as a teacher. When I say it, it's just whatever, but like when somebody else says it, they're like, oh, Mr. B, they really think this is cool. I told you, you know? But yeah, so this is from Landmark. Anaya was in 7th grade. She was like working with the VexBot. Josh is a funny story. I'm gonna tell you that later though. He basically like took a bunch of like the scraps in the class and he wanted to build like this eternal like marble run. And so like he learned how to use like a bunch of like saws and a bunch of like sanders and all kinds of stuff. Behind him is a group with like Avery Reed and Corey, and they were working on their what do they call it? The Follow Me cooler. Is because it was almost summertime and summer's for the boys, and so they wanted to have a cooler controlled by an Arduino that had beach wheels, so it would follow them around with their sodas at the beach. Yeah. And then this is Amber explaining her in progress Iron Man mask to her cousin. And this is Megan explaining, she was doing some work with Blender. She's really into Sphinx cats, and so she wanted to learn Blender, so I was like, make a model of a Sphinx cat. And so that was like her foray into Blender, and she killed it. And this is like a giant 4 foot by 8 foot like LED board that one of the groups made. I don't remember how many thousand LEDs are in there, but there were too many. And but it worked. And they also made a software that could take an image and adjust it to the resolution of the board so that it could display it. And so that was like our first year, like at Landmark and stuff. And yeah, and that board, they fried half the board. Remember, like I tell them like, hey, don't touch those wires together, but like kids are kids and they touch wires together. And so half of it died. And so we had to reorder some more and they had to like redo the whole thing like really last minute, but they made it work. And that's at the gala. And so just a couple more Landmark projects. So like I showed you Amber's water bending toy. This is Ben, he was in 6th grade at the time. The prompt here was to make an educational toy that taught kids their ABCs. And so,
here's
oh, my bad.
toy for project-based engineering.
So he had to make a model on Tinkercad first. So he made a 3D model, and after he made the 3D model, basically the toy is two-sided. On one side is magnet, so basically it's a magnet sheet. On one side is the letters being free. On the other side is the letters as blocks, like rigid. So it's like A, B, C, D through Z. So that's the study side. And then you can flip it over and then you can try and arrange the blocks like accordingly, right? And then what he also did on the other side is, as you see, those are markers included there. So he did it so that students can like almost use like stencils to learn how to like write their ABCs by tracing the learn side. And it was erasable board material, so you could erase it. And so after that, I told them to also make like a physical like prototype.
Move it around the magnets. It just won't exactly be like this. There'll be a thin layer of magnets.
Oh, so
And
like
then-
basically the
yes.
cardboard part would be like a magnetic sheet.
And then a slim sheet on one side of the letter so it
Yeah.
don't line.
And then you could move it around. And then on the back side had the letters and stuff. So like just like being mad creative about a way like to teach kids their ABCs, right? And so just different things like that. And Hannah, she made this curriculum that she took to Juarez, Mexico on a mission trip to teach younger kids about about different science concepts. And the thing that's important here is that Hannah isn't fluent in Spanish. Like she's high school fluent, right? And so but the point of her curriculum was to make it really like visual and really not use a lot of words with it, like very demonstration heavy, right? And so you can still convey the information. And so that was that. And I'd show you more, but we gotta go. Yeah, if you want to see some more of these, I can show you more later. But yeah, so there's that. And then this Du Bois coach quote speaks to the work. So it's like children learn more from what you are than what you teach. And by the way, I got a couple of quotes here. If you know that the dude didn't say the quote, please don't expose me right now. Google told me he said it, so that's why I put it there. And then this Churchill one, I'm not always ready to learn, although I do not always like being taught. Based on who Churchill was, I don't know why he would say that, but Google said he did, so I'm gonna take their word for it. So the idea of like the teaching was defining what the role of the teacher was. And the role of the teacher to me was to create an environment conducive to learning. Sometimes that's giving a lecture. Sometimes that's giving a challenge to your students. Sometimes that's throwing them to the wolves a little bit and seeing like what happens, right? Allow students to fail, right? So in my class, like I just gave kids like 100% at the beginning of the year, and I told them everybody has 100%. Don't make me go back in the grade book, because the grade wasn't the proper incentive for what I was trying to convey. So I didn't care about it, but parents did. So parents kept hitting me up like, "Hey, you haven't updated the grade book in like 2 weeks. How's my kid doing?" I'm like, "They're doing fine. Don't worry about it." And at a point, I just put like 1,000,000% for everybody, because I was like tired of parents hitting me up about it. And I crashed the system at like the end of the quarter because I did that. So apologies, Landmark. But yeah, allowing students time and resources to iterate. So the resources part is like iffy, because depending on where you are, like you might not necessarily have the resources to iterate. Like in another school, if the kids fried half that board was over, right? But luckily in this case, we had resources to work with that. Provide honest feedback and grace, because Lord knows y'all probably beating yourselves up in your head already, right? You don't need somebody like adding to that fire. And then allow students growth beyond your limitations. A lot of my students got really good at a lot of things, like much, much better than me, because when they came to class, they only got to focus on that. I was focusing on managing everybody's projects. So there was going to be a point in time where they're going to get better than me at a lot of different things. And I couldn't get like weird about it. Like, oh, we're not at that lesson yet. Don't go there, Like, so what? The dude knows all this coding and this coding. It's cool. Like that's the point. That's what you want, right? And then the definition of a project. So generally speaking, a lot of people treat projects as like a culmination of your work. Like, hey, show me your skills by building this thing, right? But I kind of looked at a project as like a way to learn the lessons that you need to learn, right? So basically, it makes learning new skills necessary. Like when Amber was like, I'm gonna build this Iron Man mask that opens up. Well, she needed to like hone in her 3D printing skills, right? She needed to make a battery pack. She needed to program her Arduino and her servo motors. She needed to do all these different things that she may have done like lightly before because of the modules, but not in as much detail. And so that's why like I view projects as like give it a purpose and a very like fine point to aim at, and everything else just kind of falls in place around it. Yeah, sharpens previously acquired skills, and it differentiates between ineptitude, proficiency, and everything in between. Because trust me, I can cram. Like I cram for tests like hard. Like you would not believe how much I cram for this, right? So, but like when it comes to project time, like there's only so much you can do at certain points sometimes, right? And so that's kind of like what the point of it is. Yeah, so basically just a summary of the curriculum purpose is just presenting new ideas and technology and changing unknown unknowns, things you don't know, to known unknowns, things you don't know, right? So now it's like, okay, I have these 5 like known unknowns. I'm only interested in these 2, right? And so then you go from there and you have your learning direction, the 2 things you want to learn, and then we educate students on the presented ideas and tech. So change those known unknowns to known knowns. So things that now they know, and it's not, it doesn't have to be at a level of proficiency yet. It's just more so like a foundational understanding. Like I get the terminology used in this subject matter, and I can have a conversation about it. You don't necessarily need to be like fire yet, right? And that's to promote self-efficacy and confidence in your abilities, right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about the areas of studies, and then we're going to move to the fire part. So the areas of study, so problem solving, approach, and metacognition, thinking about how you think. The reason why that part's important is because, like for example, I don't know how many of you have heard of the whole, a doctor was driving in a car with his son, and they got in a car crash, and the dad died, and an ambulance rushed the boy to the hospital. When they got there, the surgeon was like, I can't operate on this kid, that's my son. And then everyone's like, how's that possible? The dad who's a doctor died in the car, right? And a lot of people are just like, is it a stepdad? Like, what's going on here? And the answer is actually like really easy and straightforward. It's his mom, right? She's a doctor. And based on where, like how, not just how you grew up, your environment, the media you're surrounded by, like all these different things, like there are a lot of thought patterns that we develop that we are not aware of, and they actually also impact us when we're doing our science, right? And so I don't have the solution to it. I just more so expose my students to the fact that they do have these like thinking patterns and stuff, like how they read a problem. Like they are assuming just because they saw a word, it's significant. Sometimes it's a red herring, right? And so it's just trying to like get them to like understand those things. Computer-aided design, CAD, 3D printing, we all know that. Coding, robotics, mechatronics. I chose these 5 because I felt like most engineering is some way somehow tied to this. I could be wrong, but maybe. Yeah, and so just curriculum visuals, like students would start with like a house like that on like day 1, or a car like this on day 1, and then now they're making like a Mustang model or a mansion. They're making planes. I'm like, hey, make a thing in the class, and the kid made the saw that was hanging on the wall. More mansions, making their game tags. This kid, Miles, was always playing games in class. I was like, bruh, like finish your work first, then I'll let you play games. But Miles wants what Miles wants. And then like upgrading them to Onshape and other like such parametric software. And the reason Onshape worked well for us is because, again, it was platform independent, it was hardware independent, and kids could also do it at home, right? So it just made life easier. And actually, the kids could do it at home part was really weird because like I didn't give any homework in my class. I told them, give me your time, and I won't take time away from you, right? And like kids would go home and then they'd come back like, hey, look at the thing I built. I'm like, you know you didn't have to do that, right? And then but again, when they're hooked, they keep going, right? And so that's what happened there. One of the students, Scarlett, she wanted to build like a little habitat for her hamster. So she did it, and then we 3D printed it, and then she put it in her hamster's cage. That was a while ago, so hopefully her hamster's still alive. That was kind of morbid, but coding curriculum. So again, talking about accessibility. So you have the pre-reader blocks, high-level blocks, hybrid blocks. Pre-reader blocks are not only good for young students, they're also good for people who don't speak English, right? Because you can still teach them programming and stuff because it's heavily symbol-based, right? And so that, and then how I was talking about having like different experience levels in the same class, you can, again, turn up the fire on some students and keep some students on a slower pace, right? And then I found a Python block coding thing, which was lit because like I didn't have to worry about syntax as heavily in the beginning, and students can pace themselves, and then when they got more comfortable, they could start typing instead of using the blocks. But it helps out a lot because trying to teach syntax and logic at the same time can be a mess. And so again, being able to like find tools that help your students succeed, right? And then moving on to things like Onshape and stuff, showing them resources like W3 schools so that they can like get better at their own pace, right? If they go past you, don't hold them back. That was the idea. Even when it came to robotics, finding different simulators and stuff so that they could learn the stuff. Because again, Vex robots, like they're expensive, right? But with simulators, it's free, and they can still learn the different concepts. They can still use the different sensing controls, everything. And then using an M-Block bot, which is like $80 versus a Lego kit, which is like $300. Even though the Lego kit gives you more like modularity and stuff, as far as like the robotics-ish side is concerned, if you want to call it that, you can get away with a lot with the M-Block kit, right? And then like doing stuff with Arduinos from scratch. And so same thing with the mechatronics, they could learn the same circuitry and all that on there. Each person can do it on their like tablet or whatever individually, instead of like you having 5 Arduinos and like 4 kids per Arduino, and somebody's just kind of chilling in the corner because it's difficult to be 4 kids on one Arduino, right? So I would start them off with this, and then once they did the thing on it, then you can go into your group work. But by that point, everybody's kind of already had experience, so they're more willing to step into the conversation. And basically, this kind of summarizes the idea of the philosophy. So Neri Osman said, "I'm not a mother of children, but I'm a different type of mother where my approach to design is more in line with nature. It's less about dictating and more about editing and listening and allowing something to grow. So I nourish and let the material express what it wants to be." And so that's kind of like the idea with how I wanted to like be with my students, like, which way do you want to take this? And how do I help you get there, right? Nice. So now the final section, trial by fire, right? So what happens when you change environments? So I'm not gonna lie, I was feeling myself. I really was. I was like, this is working out, it's lit, students are loving it, parents are loving it, like, I'm the man, you know? And I was like, even the camps are working out. I would have loved to have something like this when I was growing up in Ghana. Like, let me see if I can do something about it. And so this first observation, like a lot of these observations are kind of like, are aimed at different mistakes that I've also made, right? So many of us attempt to help without first consulting the people we claim we want to help. Some of us even blamed our failures on those we claimed we were serving, even though we initiated the relationship without checking if our form of help was compatible with their circumstances, needs, and desires. Did they even need these educational opportunities, or did they need something else more urgently that we were blind to because of our one-dimensional analysis of the circumstances before us, right? Maslow, again, quote, Maslow said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail, right? So I'm in here with like, hey, great education program, solution, like everything can be solved with this, right? And so that's what I try to do. So this picture is taken in December 2019 at my grandma's village, well, the village she lived in when she was alive. It's called Kubiase. Kubiase in tree means under the coconut tree, random fact. So this was taken when Landmark went from tablets to Chromebooks, and so they were gonna recycle their tablets. I was like, hey, can I recycle them for you? And then, and so they gave me 20 of them. And I was excited, and I happened to be going to Ghana that year too, so I was like, cool, I'll just take them all with me. I wrote up like a coding curriculum. My dad was like, he'll buy them internet, and like, we're good to go. Everything's like, you know, shaping up. And then I connected with 2 people from Kubiase, the assemblyman, we nickname him Honorable because that's his position. Like my dad, they call him Captain because that's his position. I don't know why they do that, but they just do. Like they named one of my cousins after my dad, and his name is Commander because that was my dad's rank at the time. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so him and then Matthew, and they were both learning as they were teaching because this is not their background, right? And the reason I put naivety there was because I was very naive. So that's my grandma, that's me, and my dad is in the back, and my mom's behind me, and my sister's next to my grandma. But yeah, that's that. I was feeling good. Like I said, opportunity came. So I was like, let's start this after school program. Mistake number 1. All right, so initially it was going great. Students were learning. I was like monitoring from afar. I set up like a whole Google Classroom with them, and I was like seeing all the different like things they were coding and stuff. I was like, hey, this is sick. Like, let's go, you know? And then like over time, attendance starts decreasing because life setting in. The reason why I said after school was mistake number one is because people got stuff to do after school, you know, especially Kubiasa is a low income village. And so kids got to help out with siblings after school. Kids got to go work on the farm with their parents after school. Kids got to go like sell items on the streets after school. So when you come with a shiny new program like this, initially it's like, oh, that's the hype. Like, but then quickly you realize, but where's the money? Like, what about my material needs? You know, how do I take care of stuff that I need to take care of, right? And then COVID happened like a month later, and that just put the nail in the coffin, right? And so at a point, and I'm not gonna lie, like I took it very personally. I was like, dang, man, I did all this work. I carried all these tablets through like TSA because they don't weigh your carry-on, but they weigh your like actual luggage, right? So I was like, well, let me just put in the carry-on so I don't have to worry about the weight. And so like every time I get there, you know what they say, anything bigger than the phone, pull it out. Yeah, so through all my transiting flights, exactly. And so that's what I was going through and stuff. And so I was just like, I was really upset about the situation. I was like, I did all this work and I felt like they didn't give me like enough, and which was really ridiculous thinking back on it because they already have to give so much just for like their existence, like in that place. And that's how like it was. And like I had to like, you know, calm down and reevaluate the situation and reevaluate my role and how one maybe come with a program about material needs, not education, for like a place that's dealing with issues, material needs issues more urgently than education issues, right? Two, if you do come with an educational program, don't do it after school where they're already doing stuff, like try and figure out how to like blend it in with their school time or something, right? There are a lot of different ways that we could have avoided this outcome, but again, me just seeing an opportunity and just jumping and going. Remember how I said like, I didn't realize people thought things were difficult and stuff, like that's not always a good thing, right? Sometimes I just go for stuff. Yeah, and so afterwards I was like, all right, you know what? This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do it in Accra because it's closer to my home and like my family, and I will, I can't believe I still thought this. I would teach on Zoom in the hours that I wasn't at Landmark or in my free periods and stuff like that. So I'd be like up at like 3 a.m. on the Zoom call trying to teach stuff. And I would work with the school to build a makerspace. So like in this time I actually like worked to build like 2 makerspaces and stuff. And the reason I did that was because I thought part of the problem was out of sight, out of mind. And so it's like, hey, if this is here, like it's a permanent installation, like as part of the school, as part of the program and stuff, it's gonna be like, you're gonna walk past it. It can't just be forgotten, right? And yeah, so that was the plan. And observation number 2. So many of us attempt to help without first asking why there's someone to help in the first place. Are you really helping, or are you placing a Band-Aid over a much deeper injury that needs stitches? In many instances, the outside world is too busy living their own lives and dealing with their own issues to look beyond what you show them. They're too busy to tell the difference and will praise your Band-Aids and misaligned solutions because at least someone tried, regardless of what damage your attempts caused. So I ask, is this community supposed to be the beneficiary of the work, or are you, right? Do I just want the flex, or do I actually want to like help, like for real, right? Because I had to learn real quick that helping for real meant a lot of sacrifice, like more than I initially like thought, right? Because initially I was like, oh, they're gonna learn as they teach, all that different stuff. Like I've done it too, so like, you know, it's cool. But like, again, my material needs are taken care of, right? There's a lot more complexities there, right? And that's why I had that quote with the law of unintended consequences. What happens when a simple system tries to regulate a really complex system, right? And so you end up with catastrophic collapse of a program, right? And I had to like really learn that lesson. And I haven't given up. Like, I'll be honest with you, I just don't know how to go back yet, because like something more comprehensive, like to address material needs before like I even even start the conversation, right? Like how, like it's a question I think about all the time, like how do I do it, right? And so the maker's place, the reason why this is important is because remember how I said I was going to do a lot of stuff over Zoom? That would have been a disaster. Like I know I saw some of y'all faces when I said Zoom. You knew it wouldn't work. It's like a 4-hour time difference, 5 when the time jumps back, like all that. It was gonna not be a good idea. So I ended up partnering with Makerspace through LinkedIn again. if you don't update your LinkedIn, man, it's done some wonders for me. All right, so through LinkedIn, so what we do at Makerspace is we install engineering labs and makerspaces for the low. That's FTL. So it's a lot of the labs that we built. Like I negotiated different contracts with different like refurbishers. After using a lot of the equipment at Landmark, I figured out, okay, what do we actually need to spend $500 on versus what can we substitute for like the $80 version and still get like 90% of like the use, you know? Figuring all that out, I was able to put these packages together for makerspaces that I could teach coding, CAD with 3D printing, mechatronics, robotics, all that for like under 5K, including shipping to Ghana, because I know a guy with a container, or something like that. So that's kind of like how that like ended up working out, right? And after doing that, I met with Makerspace. I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing, and they're like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're like, we're going in the same direction. Let's do the fusion dance from Dragon Ball Z, if you know that. And then we became one, and then we started working together, and it's been great, right? The other thing we do is create and teach STEAM curricula and train teachers. So the training teachers part is because we realize we're a small company and we're only growing at the pace of our resources, and we can't do it all, right? So it's like we also do teacher training sessions and stuff so that the teachers can also like learn these skills as well. But then material resources. You learn the skills, you don't have the tech to take back to your school and stuff. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is how to like save more money so that we can like up our inventory so we can do like technology grants for like a semester or for like an academic year or something like that for the teachers who graduate from our programs. Provide education tech solutions for schools and educational facilities. So some of them we help like build the makerspace for, others were like, you don't necessarily have the space for it or some other like circumstance. So we also have our own inventory. So like we're like traveling through the streets of Accra, which is like running through Manhattan with like 10 robotic kits in your bag trying to make it to the school and stuff. It's not fun, but it's like, we do it. And our impact so far is we've been in like 15 plus schools and education facilities like regularly. We've touched over 3,000 students. We like regularly do about 1,000 students. Like that's our like for our schools that we're currently in. And we've trained over 40 teachers. And we do it with like the facilitator philosophy. So what I was saying about like how a teacher is kind of there to like facilitate the learning process. You don't necessarily have to be the driver in every situation. Yeah, and then we focus on school day for accessibility. So like I was saying, another lesson from Kubiasa is like, hey, we talk to the schools like, we want to be like an elective in your curriculum. Like help us figure out how to like merge and come in there. And we'll bring our teachers in from that time period that you give us, they'll teach and then they'll slide. You don't have to worry about hiring a teacher, all that different stuff. We do all the background check, we'll do all the training for the teachers. They're gonna know what they need to do and they're gonna take care of it. And then outside of the schools for schools that we're not in, populations we can't reach, we do like STEAM camps, events, and demos. And so all of these are geared towards students that like are primarily geared towards underrepresented students. Like we do stuff geared specifically towards girls, towards like people in like low income situations. And so these are some of our collaborators. This is some of like the work that we've been doing in different places and different schools. I would go through here, but again, I'll have it and I can send it to you if you want. I did this faster in practice than I am right now. And then with TechLit, so what we do in TechLit, also LinkedIn, just saying. So they're not paying me to do this, by the way. I wish they were, but they're not. Collect and refurbish desktops, laptops, like cameras, other tech, and we build computer labs with them, right? And so what we do with those computer labs is we use it to train students in different things, right? And so the reason why I have curricula bolded here in the create curricula and software and train teachers is because they brought me in for curriculum purposes, right? So at first their plan was primarily like teaching students basic computer skills and stuff. And then I was like, hey, you can expect more from your students, and here's how like to do it without like making it feel like mad pressure is on them, right? And so that's kind of like how like I got like woven in with them. And impact with TechLit, 4,000 students in like different counties in Kenya, 20 plus schools created jobs. Same thing with Makerspace, created a bunch of jobs too. They brought power to some schools because of their like tie-ins with this other org called Empower. And so like they'll come and like install solar at the school and stuff because it's like, hey, we got a computer lab now. It'd be great if you give us some power too, you know. Yeah. And then Nelly, CEO, our CEO and co-founder, she won the CNN Hero of the Year award last December. It's a cool video. And so with the TechLit projects, so Bowen is explaining his scripts and stuff, and I can send you this. But basically, the reason why I wanted to show you this is because he's explaining it in his language. I don't know Eastern African languages. It might be like a combo, like Kalenjin or something like that. But like we noticed that the students were really nervous talking about it in English because that's not their first language. But then when they started explaining it in their own like native language, like their personalities flowed through and stuff. And we also realized it's almost like creating a little like how-to for other students that are their age group and stuff like that, and how to like program in Python and how to like build a web page and do the JavaScript stuff with it and all that, right? And so we're trying to figure out if we can like, you know, push and incentivize them to like maybe one day make their own programming language in their local language and stuff in local dialect. So it's not like you have to learn English to learn the Python to whatever, right? And the last thing is the 10 of 10 scholarship fund. So it's a fund that I'm doing with some of my sister's friends. And I'm not like the head or driver of this, like I'm just like a participant in it. It's called 10 of 10 because your tithe is 10% of your salary. So it's like 10% of your tithe, it's 1% of your salary. And that's for teaching, that's for paying for students to go to school and paying for the accommodation as well. And our first year was last year, we had 13 students in the program. We currently have 19 students. We've paid about $6,982 dollars in fees so far, which doesn't look like a lot, but that's like in Ghana, depending on what school you're going to, it's like $700 is like everything you need, right? So that's why we've been able to do that. And so the challenges, real quick. So profitability to support staff and initiatives better, because like it's like I was talking about like the technology grant for like the teachers that we train. I was talking about being able to make traveling easier for our facilitators. High churn rate due to like material needs. Like I talked about, like some schools, they want to get into it, but they just can't afford to stay in it, and we got to pay our facilitators. So it's like really tough for us to like make it work, even though like we're trying. Opportunities for experience without brain drain. So like once our students get these opportunities, like we don't want them all just getting kind of scooped up by like Google and Amazon. Like, and also like, you don't want to have to like always leave your home in order to like find something better. We're trying to like foster that eco space, building out a mentorship and opportunity pipeline. But when there's just a couple of you, time is like tough, right? And then the limits of nonprofit structure, like it lacks a lot of flexibility, like as far as how you can spend your money and all that. And it's tough to attract talent because like, let's be real, if you're a nonprofit, you're still competing with for-profit companies that are like paying their software engineer different than you can pay your software engineer and stuff. And it's like, I understand people like, well, you went nonprofit, so you should do it for the love. It's like, yeah, but love doesn't feed me, you know? Like, so there's that. Limit to for-profit, so make a space, we're trying to for-profit way, and some orgs don't collab with us because they're like, you're a for-profit organization, but we're still like, I can't even explain it. But yeah, tougher to get donations as well. And then, like I said, the time commitments for, like, this is specifically for the scholarship fund. So time commitment for interviews, meetings, check-ins with our students, see how they're doing. And then this is the last before the last. So why do this? Because we want to address that opportunity gap that I mentioned before, right? Like opportunity versus luck versus hard work. Like address that and try and manufacture luck. Try your best to create something where the zip code that you're born in doesn't matter, right? Which is kind of seems impossible, but like we're trying. Welcoming environments reduce turnover, because a lot of people talk about like how to get somebody in the door, but a big thing is, do you keep them once they're there, right? Like you got them in, you entice them to get here, but like after they experience like your work environment, like how do they feel about it, right? Many problems are low-hanging fruit, like especially in Ghana, like, man, like something like sanitation. It's not like you don't need like a complex, like, I don't know, Megatron robot, like picking up the trash. Like sometimes it's just doing a study on the traffic in the area and figuring out where's the best place to put trash cans, right? But like if you don't have systems in place that allow you to do these kinds of things, it just makes it really tough. And I'm not saying we don't, but I'm saying that like it's not as widespread as it needs to be. Healthy ecosystem promotes rest. Because if there are only a couple people actually doing this kind of work, that means that they're doing that work all the time, right? And it's like you still got your job. You still got the job that you have to do your science. You still have to do your research and all that. But like the students only come to you because they know you're probably the only one who's going to say yes because you're the one who usually says yes. It's like one of those things where when you do really good at something, people keep asking you to do the thing, you know? Normalize these spaces for underrepresented people and create more advocates. So when you create more advocates, there are more people who are like, hey, if we can't get computers to the students, maybe we can do like a coding without computers thing, which is literally like just physical block coding to and like a little puzzle set up so that the students can like navigate through the puzzle and like with coding and like creating loops and like all kinds of stuff, right? Because you gotta know the situation to like intimately in order to like figure out, okay, how do we get around it? How do we like figure something out, right? And then also because it's a person, like I'm not gonna lie, even personally, like I got family like in situations that like I don't blame them for being kind of nihilistic in, right? It's like, bro, there's nothing going on here. Like you don't get it, you're there, right? And they're right, I don't, but it's just like, what do you do, right? By the numbers, it's depressing too. Like you look in the room, like, yeah, it is what it is. Like it doesn't have to be said, right? And the rhetoric, like how some people talk about like, hey, we're helping underrepresented people. Like it's like we're doing them a favor, but like if they weren't blocked in the first place, they wouldn't need accommodations to be helped and stuff. Does that make sense? So it's like I don't like how that conversation goes, right? It's kind of like stripping you of your dignity in a sense. Like, oh, poor baby, like let me help you, like come through this. And so this is the final observation, and it says, many of us never realized that we are missing potential colleagues, friends, and other connections in our classrooms, labs, workspaces, and lives who would have contributed knowledge and innovative solutions whose origins we cannot fathom for needs we cannot see. How much progress have we prevented from existing because we learn, work, and interact in spaces that have these missing people and the experiences they bring with them, right? There are a lot of solutions that could have been, right? And so that's a big reason why we do this too. Like we need people in these spaces to come contribute to life. So thank you all for attending this talk. I know it was longer than I expected, but yeah. So I know I'm kind of past time, but if you have any questions still, I'm chilling over here. If not, thank you. Yes, sir.
Don't kick me out of the room. Mom get her money back?
Did mom get her money back? You know, I think about that all the time. Not yet. Not yet. Which is kind of wild because I like one of those makerspaces. I took the money that I like tied to do it, and I'm sure my mom was looking at me like, "Oh, so you have money for that?" Yeah.
One more question, please.
Yeah.
Do you still have those 20 tablets, or did you get rid of them?
No, so they're now with Makerspace, and so we're using them at different schools that we go to or different organizations when kids don't have any devices with them. Yeah, Nate.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was really curious. What do you think is the relationship between hard work and luck?
Man, so I don't know. Like it's just, bro, because I've seen some people that have never, I'm not gonna say never, that's an exaggeration, but barely lifted a finger in anything, and like stuff just goes their way, man. It just be like that sometimes. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm that person. Like not because like I'm lazy or anything like that. I'm sometimes lazy, but like y'all saw that timeline. Like a lot of random stuff like really like had to go my way, right? Like a lot of stuff had to go my way randomly and stuff. And it's like I'm not saying that I don't work hard. I'm saying that there's some opportunities that my hard work didn't create, right? I didn't fumble the bag once it was like placed in my lap, but like it doesn't matter if the bag isn't replaced in your lap, you know? Like, so I don't know, but I think that being in spaces with people doing stuff kind of increases your chance of being luckier that somebody might notice you. I think that being in an environment where there's stuff going on, like there's activity, increases your chances of having good luck come your way. I think that being trained in different skill sets and knowing how to talk to people and stuff increases your chance that you might talk to somebody that might like the way you talk and be like, hey, do you want to blah, blah, blah. Like Jason offered me that job. I hadn't seen Jason in like 3 or 4 years because I was in college. Like I think he just thought I was a nice kid back when I lived with him and stuff. He's like, you're a nice kid, you're doing engineering at Vanderbilt and at Fisk. Like, what are the chances that this goes wrong? And they could have gone horribly wrong. I could have been a terrible teacher. Like the kids could have been like, who is this guy? You know? But by the grace of God, it didn't go wrong. Like it worked out. So I don't know, but like I think that working on the environment can certainly like increase the odds towards people's favor.
I just have a concept of what you were talking about, hard work, luck, and actually network. I love her. I'm already married, guys, so don't worry. I think with all three has a play in everybody's life because the universe always open up to give you what you need if you bring yourself to the line. So hard work, luck, and networking comes to an energy that synergizes, that you can move on to the next level without you knowing what level you have to move on to.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that the three things, like I don't know why I settled on them. Like I did it freestylingly, but like those three things have definitely like are a thing. Like I don't know what the ratio is or that I don't know if it's consistent throughout like every situation, but it's somehow there. Yeah.
I found it really useful that you, first of all, this was a really brave talk.
Thank you.
And I just want to appreciate that. But coming back to the thing I was going to say is the idea that we can manufacture it, right? That we manufacture luck and we manufacture. I often think of my life and I don't know how those three played, and I could sit there, but it's very obvious to me that I am manufacturing. I'm somehow involved in the luck that other people have. And that's been true since the beginning. Like it wasn't just because I'm a senior faculty now, even when I was an undergrad talking to undergrads.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really powerful. Like even if we don't understand what those things played a role in our life, we do understand that we cause those things for other, including networking. And so like, so if we do it deliberately, as opposed to just let things happen.
Yeah.
I feel for me that was really nice. I really like that. I think I'm going to take it away. It's like manufacture luck and manufacture networking, and then people bring hard work to the table all the time.
Yeah.
If they're not totally depressed.
Yeah. Exactly.
I feel like asking somebody who's really depressed and who's nihilistic that they're not working hard is like a pretty ridiculous thing. So I feel like people do bring hard work to the table. Yeah, but I don't know. I like the manufactured part, even though I can't like personally figure out what was hard work or luck or networking in my own life either.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking about this quote that I really like, and so I looked it up. Who said it? I'll tell you who said it later. But I really like this quote. It says, "Luck favors the prepared," and I always think about that. And I googled it. It's from The Incredibles. It's by. So make what you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think the Romans also said it.
Okay. I don't trust Google. It said it.
Maybe they took it from the
Every ancient culture has said it.
Yeah.
So, maybe building on this idea of manufacturing the luck and really doing this in a very intentional way. Sometimes something that worries me about all of these programs is that you take in these kids, you expose them to some really cool stuff, and you can get them excited. And of course, that has long-lasting effects.
Yeah.
But often there's a sense in which you just like put them back and say, okay, well, good luck with the rest of your life.
Exactly.
So
Most of outreach is like
most
that.
of outreach
It's like that. Exactly.
and there's some efforts that I've seen to kind of follow up and alumni networks, which can help. That's one
Yeah.
of the three. But if we want to be intentional about manufacturing this, like in these opportunities, I'm wondering, out of what you've learned at the different orgs you've collaborated with, do you have any sense of what can really work? Like, what can be a way of scaling this up in timelines, right? Like, you're not going to be able to reach everyone, but at least the people that you reach. It's probably more useful if you have a certain amount of resources to invest them in making sure that some people you really reach and you really help them.
Yeah, I think that in a lot of different situations, I feel like the government did something that like really accelerated people embracing certain things and stuff. And so how I kind of like look at it is that people like the nonprofit space, the for-profit space, whatever, we kind of act as like testing beds, testing grounds and stuff like that. And when you build something that works and that works well, if there were like, I don't know, incentives or programs where it's like, hey, we have proven this concept for blah, blah, blah. This is what we need to like take it to the next level. I know it sounds like a venture capital thing, but it's not in that way. It's because this is not like a for-profit enterprise. It's basically like a upskilling enterprise, or like honestly, like something for like your mental health.
CS for All is a good example
Yeah.
of what you're suggesting. Like, they were a bunch of people who were trying to change the intro courses in
Yeah.
CS. They started doing stuff, and then that caused NSF to create a grant program called CS for All, that then you could get these major grants. And so both you get
Yeah.
the check mark of a government organization, but you're also getting taxpayer
Exactly.
dollars. But first, there had to be these nonprofits
And
these efforts that made it visible.
Yeah.
And do something different, like the CS Principles course.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. But yeah,
that whole like being able to like lean on something like that, because I'm not like, honestly, I'm not sure, because even like some of the companies that we go to try and like work with, get help from and stuff, they end up like, it's like they're like, hey, this is what we want from like a software developer or something like that. And then you give the software developer the skills, and then by the time you get that, they're like, actually, it's changed and stuff. They don't actively involve themselves with like the curriculum development or the training and stuff like that. They don't keep up. They're just like, here's our wish list. Like, Magic Genie, bring us this person in blah, blah, blah time and stuff. It's like, nah, if you want that, like, involve yourself in the process. But like, why would you involve yourself in the process if you're like, that's not, you want the person, but you don't want the work that comes like with the person and stuff, and you feel like you got other things to focus on. So it's really tough. I'm not 100% sure, but like based on what we've been doing and stuff, I think that for us, it's trying to like really like foster that ecosystem and foster the ground that's around us, like try and let people know that like, hey, it might not be like doing it for a company per se, but like what can we do about like our community, and like maybe like doing it in a kind of decentralized way where it's like, well, if you're doing it for the community, maybe more community members will respond and like wanting to be part of the solution and stuff. Where somebody like, it's like, hey, I think this is a good idea for like sanitation in this spot and stuff. You like go around knocking on doors and stuff like that. Would y'all be interested in being part of the solution and all that? And like maybe like doing that a couple of times will get people to take notice and want to pitch in and chip in, because there's just like so much going on with like all of it. And like you said, you don't want to just like teach people something then leave them to dry, which is one of the things I mentioned. Like, it's tough, right? Because then it's like, it's kind of like hope and then pulling the rug out from under them, which I feel like is worse than not even going there in the first place.
It's also a ton of work.
Yeah.
So like you exhaust yourself and then like nothing comes out. So like that's also like not fun.
Yeah, exactly.
For the person doing it either.
I mean, there's a sense in which doing this same work sort of over and over, but in isolated ways, ultimately makes it so that I don't know that it goes to waste, but like it doesn't compound.
Yes, you're right. And that's why like we're trying to like do all these networks with our schools and stuff. Like one of the videos I would have showed you with Makers Places, we did like a FLL like Lego robotics scrimmage, like with some of the kids, like some robotics kits that we got from this organization we're collaborating with in out of the University of, is it University of Arizona or Arizona State? Arizona State, Degrees of Freedom. Their robotics team sponsors some robotics kits for us. And then right now, like another person's actually, because I'm going to Ghana in December, they're sending me some robotics kits I can take with me to Ghana, like for Makers Place to continue to build out all the different robotics programs and things that we're doing. Like I see people seeing it and they like it. They're trying to help. Same thing with like TechLit. They're trying to like, people are seeing it and pitching in and stuff. Mr. Roger.
I just got to You open up with reflection, how to learn to stay to help and to stay out of the way. In your reflection of what you just gave me, how have you pondered on new ways to help people to do these things that you open up with?
I haven't. I've not pondered how to help people do that. I think that I've been so focused on this part of it that like I haven't really thought about like partnerships as much, because like I've had a lot of like rug pulls partnership wise where people are like, "Oh, this is dope. Like I want to help," and then hey, and then hey, and then like you just give up, right? The reason a lot of the people that I end up partnering with that worked well is because they were already like heading in that direction, like individually, whether I existed or not, and I was already heading in that direction individually, whether they existed or not. So it's like we kind of already brought in like our own individual juice, and we just made a smoothie or something like that. I don't know, right? But like trying to like somebody who's not doing like anything, trying to partner with them can be like very weird, because it's like they might have the energy, like the excitement, but one, they haven't really seen the work yet, and so that could be a little discouraging for them. And two, sometimes it's like off of the initial hype and excitement, you think you want to do the thing, right? But then you're like, oh, actually, that's a lot of work, and then you don't want to do it, so you ghost the person instead of telling them, and that's just like kind of rude. But it, I also understand it. It's like you don't want to like, you don't want to be like, hey, bro, like this is a great thing, but like I'm busy, or like I actually just don't want to do it anymore, you know? And so that part I haven't figured out. I've thought about that for a while. Like I gave up on like collaborating. Like Maker's Place is what brought it back up, because there were so many people who were like, oh, I want to help, oh this, oh that, and like I was really like waiting for people I didn't even ask for help, people I offered to pay to help me do some stuff, like literally, like it got really frustrating. So I just kind of like just decided to like just go dolo, and then luckily like I happened to meet some collaborators that were the real deal, and it worked out. Yeah, sorry. We will slide.
There have been people trying to. Can we give Baffour a round?
Thank you.